Tonight on Free Minds TV, we'll be discussing a new drug that is legal for now that's gaining popularity. Also, a major drug bust in Texas that turned out to be nothing more than a gardening operation. We'll also be discussing efforts in Canada to crack down on the consumption of soda and other junk food. That, plus a whole lot more, coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
Welcome to episode 159 of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. It is still Toby here with you.
And Nick.
And Nick, we've been gone for a couple of weeks. We actually have been trying to create shows. We've just had some scheduling conflicts and technical difficulties. Actually, last week we did create a show, but the only person who got to view it was our producer, Rick, out there. Or the director, Rick, out there.
It didn't record, so if you don't record a show, it turns out we can't actually put it on TV.
So we do apologize for not being here. We've been trying, exactly. But we are back. We have a big show to be getting into, Nick. We are going to be discussing the crackdown on fatties and going after the fat people who...
Well, it's a crackdown on the foods, whether you're fat or not.
Well, we're going to be talking about possible fat taxes and stuff in the second half of tonight's show. But first, wanted to focus in on the war on drugs, Nick. And the first story we have is going to take us down to Corpus Christi, Texas, where police officers thought they had one of the largest marijuana busts in the police department's history. But after hours and hours of yard work, well, that's all it was yard work, because what they thought was marijuana plants turned out to be nothing more than simple horse mint. Yes, this plant that actually looks nothing like marijuana fooled the police in Texas, and after, quote, one of the largest marijuana plant seizures in the police department's history, turned out to be relatively common prairie flowers, according to this article coming down from the Raw story. Now, the officers, they were so proud after a boy on a bike rode through a park here in Corpus Christi, Texas, said he thought he saw something that looked like marijuana plants. Apparently the police in Texas haven't seen marijuana before because they believed him, and they spent the rest of the day bagging and tagging over 400 plants. It wasn't until they actually took them back to the lab and tested them that they found that they were nothing but horse mint plants. Now, Nick, I don't know if this is speaking to the intelligent levels of some of the police members in Texas, but if you're a police officer, shouldn't you know what a marijuana plant looks like? I mean, this is a drug that millions and millions of Americans, actually over 100 million Americans, have admitted to smoking. It's illegal in every single state. And on the federal level, you would think that police officers, one of the things they had to learn is what it looks like, what it smells like. At least be able to distinguish it from a mint plant, which is very potent.
Yeah, I mean, most members of the general public can make that distinction. So how you can fail to do that when you're a police officer, and especially if you're working, I assume Corpus Christi must have at least a narcotics officer, if not a narcotics division. How you would not be able to make that distinction and actually identify marijuana without actually needing to rely on lab tests, I don't know. I mean, unless this was just, we don't know from the article, I doubt it was just one police officer out there who wasn't really paying attention that day.
It was a team of them.
I mean, yeah, if they bagged and cataloged 400 plants for evidence, there must have been at least a few police officers out there, especially if they thought it was a major drug bust. So
it doesn't
not
even
one of them
look
said,
much
this
like
stuff
it
doesn't
at
look
all.
like marijuana at all.
It smells like mint.
This is not marijuana.
Huh. Well, anyways, it's a waste of time, a waste of tax money, but I mean, it would have been a waste if they were out there harvesting regular marijuana, or probably what would have turned out to be hemp, because, well, marijuana is a weed as well, and it grows wild, especially in places like Texas. Hemp is a very common weed, or marijuana. It goes both. But most of the stuff seized by the DEA in these narcotic roundups, in these cases, it's just wild hemp, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis grows wild on every continent where there are people living. It doesn't grow in Antarctica. It doesn't grow north of the Arctic Circle. But it grows wild pretty much everywhere else. So when they make these drug seizures, a lot of times, you're right, Toby, they're just wild plants. They're not really drug seizures. it would be like if they went out and cut down dandelions and said that somebody had been cultivating them. That's not necessarily true. There is quite a bit of marijuana that they see that is being cultivated and that people are going to either use themselves or sell, but it's a naturally occurring plant. It's not like a drug that's refined in a laboratory. It's just a plant. It would be like hacking down, I don't know, barley. Yeah, because you said it was going to be used in beer production. I mean, that doesn't necessarily, just because it's barley doesn't mean it's actually part of the beer trade.
Right. Now, Nick, I have a question. Would I sound like a crazy man if I said, well, this is happening in Texas. This is one of the places that's been plagued with border violence due to the war on drugs and smuggling marijuana into the state of Texas and into Arizona and other states. Thousands and thousands of pretty bad people, as well as innocent people being killed on the border because of the war on drugs and smuggling marijuana and other drugs into Texas, into Arizona, into the United States. Would it be crazy for me to say, well, let's promote homegrown in the United States rather than supporting this violent war that's going on in Mexico where people are dying and killing each other and all sorts of horrible things happening to
the US
grow it in Mexico?
The U.S. government's position seems a lot more crazy, and they're saying that we need to keep marijuana illegal despite the fact that it doesn't, as far as I can tell, do anything to reduce usage rates or people developing problems with other drugs. It doesn't really do any social good. And you're right, Toby, it creates a black market and it creates a demand for marijuana grown outside the U.S. And so we do see violence not only in U.S. border states and in U.S. cities as part of the drug trade, but terrible violence in Mexico where thousands have been killed over the last couple of years. Recently with the controversy over the extradition of what an alleged drug lord, probably is a drug lord, in Jamaica. We've seen scores of people killed there. So this results in a lot of violence. Marijuana prohibition and drug prohibition in general result in a lot of violence both at home and abroad, in U.S. inner cities, on the U.S. border, and in countries thousands of miles away. Many, many thousands of people die every year as a result of drug prohibition. And as far as the medical evidence shows, it's not really clear that marijuana itself really kills anybody.
But you know what is harmful, Nick? Some of the chemicals that these Mexican drug dealers and other drug dealers or drug lords from around the world
the American ones do it too.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about a black market, there's no checks or balances on the product. I mean,
it's not like you're going to file suit against your drug dealer.
Right.
Or against
so
the
your drug dealers, there's no reason to keep a quality product, a safe product. So who knows what they're spraying on it, whether it's the chemicals to keep bugs off or whether it's, I don't know, lacing it with some other drug to put it, some crappy product, put some, I don't know, LSD on it or something, sell it to someone
PCP,
who doesn't know it.
It's not uncommon for certain drug dealers to actually lace marijuana with more harmful drugs. Which is a lot, essentially they're spiking it, they're dusting it.
So that's what happens.
And it causes a lot of harm.
One of the myriad of unintended consequences when you have a black market on it, not to mention, well, we're going broke as a nation trying to house, it's 1 million marijuana arrests alone every year here in the United States, more people behind bars than any other country in the world, social problems through the roof due to this. But it seems like the public's going in the direction of legalize or at the very least decriminalize because the unintended consequence of prohibition of the marijuana as well as the war on drugs in general is far more harmful than the drug itself. Our elected leaders are very slow to pick this up. These elected leaders, or so-called elected leaders, they're useless, Nick, when it comes to this. They don't pick up on what the public wants on this. They just take their bribes from the police officers union, who essentially, this article we're talking about in Corpus Christi, there's your tax dollars. These police officers pay a lobbyist to go out and keep marijuana illegal so then they can go get paid for a day's work of harvesting horse mint plants, bagging it, tagging it, taking it to the lab. That's what your tax dollars are going to make sure they can continue doing that. And this is just one example of the wasted money, but I mean, there's so many other costs to society, costs to individuals, lives ruined, the Constitution been torn to shreds, Fourth Amendment gone because of this war on drugs. I think it's time to end it, Nick. But no, that's not what the elected representatives or so-called representatives are planning on doing. No, they're cracking down harder on certain drugs and even taking drugs that are currently legal and making them illegal. This is coming from USA Today, where nearly a dozen states and several cities are banning or debating bans on K2, or spice, a packet of herbs coated with synthetic chemical that mimics marijuana high when it is smoked. Now, why are they making this illegal? There are fears that its use is spreading among young people. Well, while this is true, its use is definitely spreading because, well, it's legal and people who don't want to have an arrest record or don't want to pay as much or they don't want to pay the black market prices are using it. I don't think that making it illegal is the way to go, Nick. That's not to say that people should do it. I think that people should avoid this, but I don't think that creating another prohibition is going to be helpful here.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's arguably more harmful to use this alternative, which is at the moment legal, as opposed to using marijuana.
Well, of course it's more harmful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not natural. You're talking about a synthetic chemical sprayed on herbs and then smoked, and that's what's giving you the high rather than something that's natural. Clemson University chemist John Huffman, a research professor whose graduate students synthesized the substance in his lab 15 years ago, says the chemical may be harmful and, quote, it should not be out there. So the guy who helped create this says that it may be harmful. Studies need to be conducted before any humans would imbibe in this stuff. So it really shouldn't be out there. But instead of legalizing drugs, taking away the prohibition, these stupid elected officials are going the opposite direction. They're going to push it underground. They're going to make it more harmful. They're going to start getting people arrested for this. Am I saying people should do this? Absolutely not. What should people actually do? Well, maybe push the elected officials to legalize marijuana so that drugs like spice or K2, this synthetic chemical, don't even need to exist. I mean, people are smoking K2 or spice, and apparently a lot of them are going to the hospital and stuff because of this, because marijuana is illegal. They don't want to get busted. They don't want to get an arrest record. It's also much cheaper. It's $35 an ounce versus, I don't know, what's marijuana cost? Anywhere from 100 to 500
to a couple
an ounce.
thousand. Yeah,
I mean, it varies depending on the quality, I believe. But people are switching to this more harmful alternative because the less harmful alternative is illegal. Young people's lives are being ruined. They're doing harmful things because people with old white hair can't get it through their thick skulls that Reefer Madness was a complete BS propaganda movie out there, Nick. It's also because there are very bad people who have power, who lobby the government to keep this illegal because it makes them lots of money, Nick. This is a very sad day for America.
Yeah, well, it's been going on. It's been going on for a long time.
It's not just today?
No, it's not just today.
I just learned about this.
And a lot of the alternatives that people turn to, that aside from illicit drugs,
maybe we should go huff some spray paint. That's legal.
Spray paint, gasoline, Freon.
That'll be good for the brain.
Most of those things are far more harmful for you.
Yeah, take a can of duster and shove it up your nose, but you won't go to jail, kids.
Yeah, but it's probably more likely to kill you than cocaine. I mean, it's bad. It gets you high by forcing the oxygen out of your lungs. And these are the yeah, that is apparently what it does. So that's
hold your breath for a really long time.
It's heavier. The gas in there is heavier than air, and it just settles in your lungs, and it can kill you. You can kill yourself that way. So a lot of the alternatives that people are seeking far more harmful than the street drugs. That's not to say that there isn't harm that results from using drugs.
No. I'm not saying people should do drugs, Nick. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. I think that drugs affect everybody differently. There's going to be side effects to all drugs used. I think that I'm not advocating
for addiction.
Of course,
there's any drug.
Drugs are very, very wrong. I mean, alcohol, a horrible, horrible drug, Nick. But I would never tell people they should make it illegal. I mean, it's one of the worst drugs out there for people.
Yeah, alcohol prohibition didn't work out so well.
No, it doesn't work.
Time it was tried.
That's the point.
And drug prohibition doesn't work any better.
And by cracking down on things, you only make them more popular. Now this news story is out there. I'm sure that in the last week or two since this story came out, this stuff is skyrocketing. Stores, businesses who previously didn't have this drug on the shelves, they're stocking it. Because people will buy it now. Because now it's in the news. Now you're cracking down on it. Now young people are going to be imbibing in a substance that's much more harmful to them. Why? Because you made a prohibition on the original stuff, on marijuana. So now people are trying to mimic the high and they're harming themselves. Well, good job, elected officials. I hope you're happy. I hope your kids get a hold of this stuff. And then you can see firsthand what happens when you act like an ass. Yeah. All right, Nick.
I have seen it actually for sale at gas stations over the last couple
It's becoming
weeks
very popular. And I'm not saying people should do this, Nick. I think it's a very bad idea. But making it illegal is not the way to go. It's still going to exist if you make it illegal. I don't know if people know that. Do they know that, Nick? Yeah, maybe you can't buy it at 7-Eleven, but this stuff's out there now, and it's not going away. You can still buy the drugs
at 7-Eleven. You just do it in the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there are a lot of drug deals that take place in gas station parking lots across the country.
This drug now, well, it's out there, folks. And by cracking down, well, you're only going to raise its popularity. The only way to get young people to stop spraying chemicals on herbs and then smoking them, synthetic chemicals on herbs. They spray it on and they smoke it, Nick. The only way to get them to stop doing that is to get rid of the prohibition on marijuana. Let them get it out of their system without going to jail, without an arrest record, just like over 100 million Americans have tried, and then move on with their lives. But no, let's give them some kind of spice crap with synthetic chemicals on it. Or we'll make a prohibition on this and it'll just go away. We'll put some words on paper, people. We'll write it down that says, this product does not exist anymore, and then it won't. Is that how it works? Worked with all the other drugs, didn't it? All right, Nick, we do need to move on here. We've got a lot more to talk about. I really want to get into the fatties, talking about cracking down on these people.
They're not specifically cracking down on overweight people, but they're cracking down. The government is cracking down on things that they say make you fat.
All right, well, we'll get into that. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Free Minds TV. And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It still is Toby here with you.
And it still is Nick.
All right, Nick, you know that chip-in page up at freemindsmedia.org to get us this new set, a nice new background, pay the bills, is stopped. $49. We need $300 by the 4th of July. It stopped. Hasn't budged in a couple of weeks. I was thinking some people emailed me. They said, why is only Nick taking this shot? Why are you not going to take it too? Well, okay, I'll tell you what. We get $300 by Independence Day. Both Nick and myself will take a shot of hot sauce live on the air and then try to do the show. Might be the worst show we ever did, but it'll entertain you folks. Plus, we'll get a sweet finished set out of the deal.
Somebody might even be sick.
Yeah,
if that's something you like to see.
Anyways, plus it helps us out either way. I mean, even if you don't want us to drink the hot sauce, for God's sake, folk, give us the money. freemindsmedia.org, click on the chip-in button. Even if you can only afford $1, don't be one of those people who hasn't paid your fair share.
People like PBS now.
Yeah, I know. Well,
we could use the money for the new set though.
Yeah, we're in the red, Nick. We're in the red, and all we're asking for is $1 or $2 from people who have watched hundreds of our shows and enjoyed them, Nick, for free. We don't even have commercials, really. freemindsmedia.org. All right, Nick, moving right along, you've got this article that I want to know what it's about. I don't really know what the meat of the article is, but I know it's talking about cracking down on people who like to eat sweets and make their bellies bigger.
Yeah, well, this particular article is coming from Canada, but there are similar initiatives here in the U.S., and I think it's important to look at what's going on in Canada because I wouldn't be surprised to see a bigger push made against soda, sugar, fat here in the U.S. over the next few years. And this is specifically coming from Toronto, where the city of Toronto has decided that on its own property, choice is something its citizens are better off without. Hoping to prod its children into better eating habits, the city is planning to banish soda and energy drinks from vending machines in its community centers and arenas. Canada is not alone, obviously. The battle against sugar is being engaged on in many levels throughout the United States and on the international level with the World Health Organization pushing for a global strategy initiative against obesity this week.
A global strategy to fight obesity? Mm-hmm. What if we fed the fat people to the skinny people?
Why don't you just leave it up to people who are maybe a little bit overweight to lose weight on their own?
Or die of being too fat.
It's a free country, or it used to be. So you used to be able to choose how much food you consumed.
Well, we're talking about Canada, right? They're not a free country.
Well, They're not much less free than we are. I don't,
Well, I'm interested in this
Canada.
international move,
different.
Nick. I'm interested in this
All right,
international
well-
move. The whole world is going to crack down on fatties?
Well, the World Health
Isn't
Organization
most
is
of the
gonna try to
world
push-
skinny?
They're a lot thinner than the average American, yeah.
I know their bellies are bloated because they've been eating dirt all day.
That's in the third world. That's true. That's usually from I forget what that's from. It's usually either from parasites or I think it's actually a deficiency.
They eat all the dirt. They get all those
Iron.
parasites in their bellies. Blow
It's not
up.
just parasites. It's also some people don't have enough to eat, which is kind of.
Well, maybe the World Health
the fact
Organization.
we're debating about
they've been
what to do
watching
about the
too
fact we have
much
too much food.
National Geographic. They're confused. They see these kids with bloated
think they're
bellies and they
talking-
say the world's fat.
I think they're talking about Americans
Oh,
mostly.
all right.
Um,
I'm sorry. I'll let you continue.
There are some Canadians who are speaking out against this, even though we would think that Canada is a little bit more of a nanny state than the United States. There are people there who don't really think this is any of the government's business either. Well, if you argue against targeting obesity, the public health consensus is at odds with those who would rather make up their own minds. To what extent do you start regulating the lives of people so as not to hurt themselves? Asked Jack Mintz, the Palmer Chair in Public Policy at the School of Policy Studies at the University of Calgary. How far down the road do you want to go? Should we disallow people from going to fast food places? It's a good question.
It is?
Well, it's a logical question to ask. Yes, if you're going to start restricting the sale of soda or adding new taxes to it, why not just outlaw McDonald's, outlaw Burger King, outlaw anywhere? And there are a lot of food chains that people think of as healthy where the food isn't any better than fast food. So why not just ban those places?
Yeah, well, you know, Nick, this is what I think we should do. Get the government out of it. You see a fat person on the street, you say, hey, fatty, you keep eating like that, you're going to die soon. He said, okay. I said, all right, have a good day. Is that wrong?
It's better
Hey,
than
you're a
taxing it.
slobodon. You keep eating, you'll be fat.
Yeah, well, it's better than taxing it. I mean, I did want to say that
I'm not trying.
they're actually looking
The
on
hate mail's rolling in there.
Yeah.
But the point here is it's not the government's business to get in people's lives to decide how fat they're allowed to be. Now, the argument here is that if these people get too fat, well, they're going to be digging in my wallet because they'll have to go to the doctor more and they're less healthy and they'll have to pay for their surgeries and their heart transplants and all that stuff because they're so fat, right? They're eating unhealthy, they're getting the beats, they're getting diabetes, they're going to have their legs chopped off and all that stuff, and I don't want to have to pay for that. We have universal health care, right? So whatever goes down your throat comes out of my wallet when it goes on your hips. That's the argument here, right? Well, guess what? It's wrong. You're wrong, people. This is what happens. Fat people, they eat a whole lot, Nick. They die before they collect Social Security and they go on Medicaid for 40, 50 years. You know, my grandpa, he's 90 years old. He's been collecting Social Security for, I don't know, the past 30 years. And he's been on Medicaid. I mean, he's lapping up that money. The people who don't lap up that money, the ones who die at 45, 50, before they ever touch that money because they had a heart attack because they ate too much food. So what we need to do, Nick, is encourage fat people to keep eating, and that will keep our costs down.
I don't know about that, but from a cost to the taxpayer perspective, I've definitely heard it argued that people who are overweight, people who smoke, do actually cost the system less money as opposed to more because, as you pointed out, they're not around to draw on Social Security, other benefits programs that older folks usually eat up a lot of the money. And when you look at healthcare costs, it's usually end-of-life care that costs the most. If you have a sudden massive heart attack or stroke from eating too much, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but from the standpoint of what it costs the taxpayer and what it costs the government, it doesn't cost as much. Now, I think there's a problem in that we have this basically a universal system that makes every personal health choice you make a matter of public policy as opposed to an individual choice. Seems to me that people should be responsible for paying for their own medical care. If you make negative health, decisions health-wise, if you choose to smoke, eat fatty foods, it seems like you should expect to at least pay higher premiums for insurance. Well, now the government's stepping in and they're muddling the waters, and it's not going to work that way. I mean, it's mostly because of government intervention that, yes, in fact, we are all kind of shoved into the same pool when it comes to health insurance now, or sort of the same pool.
Yeah, Nick, this is why democracies just don't work. Because in a democracy, any fool, any idiot can get elected and create any idiotic law they want. And if they get enough other fools to say it's a good idea, well, they get it passed, and then everybody else has to live that way. Did you know that in New York, I don't know the exact text of the bill, but in New York, they passed this law in the school system that says you need to bring all snacks coming in from outside the school need to have nutritional information on them in order to bring them. All right, sounds good. All touchy-feely. The idiot who wrote the bill thinks, oh, I'm doing such good things for the kids. The people who signed into law and said, yay, we're going to make the kids less fat. Meanwhile, they're, of course, banning recess and running on the playground and stuff because I don't want someone to trip and have a lawsuit. But guess what their bill did? It meant that people who want to bake their own healthy snacks can't bring them in. Because guess what? Home-cooked food doesn't have nutritional labels on it. So you can bring in, I don't know, that Twinkie over there because it only has 100 calories. Can I bring in this healthy granola bar my hippie mother made? Well, of course you can, because your hippie mother doesn't have the nutritional facts. That's how stupid these people are. They're so dumb, Nick, but they write these nanny state bills that make them feel good and they sound so good on paper, but in actuality, it's just morons putting words on paper that everybody else has to follow. They don't think it through. It irks me, Nick, because it's so idiotic. It's so stupid. We're going to make the world a better place by taxing soda and taxing fat people for being fat. No, all you're going to make is some poor fat bastard's life suck even more because he has to pay an extra $1 on every 12-pack of soda he buys, and that's over a course of a year. That's a whole lot less 12 packs of soda he gets to drink. And guess what? He's fat. He's going to die anyways. Those, 12,000 calories he didn't get down his gullet aren't going to make the difference, but it made his life a little bit worse. Controlled him, made him less of a free person. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, a democratic process, just because things are decided upon democratically doesn't mean there are good decisions being made. In fact, I think government's a poor instrument for trying to make decisions that individuals ought to be making. And I think this is definitely one of them. If you don't have some kind of a limit on where government can go, they're going to get right down to regulating what kind of food you can consume. And that seems to be the antithesis of what you're supposed to be able to do in a free society. You're not even free now to choose what you eat.
My own person. I'm a free person. I own my own body, but I'm not allowed to decide what goes down my own throat.
A lot of Canadians apparently disagree with us when we say that we think people should be able to make their own decisions about their nutrition. And this might be true in America. I don't know. This polls from Canada. Proposals for fat taxes on unhealthy products continue to be mooted at home and abroad, though an outcry forced Ontario Premier Dalton McGuinty to retreat from the idea in 2004. Earlier this month, a poll suggested that 77% of Quebecers would want a special tax on soft drinks, energy drinks, and other sugary beverages. And another poll showed that about 70% of Canadians in the rest of Canada, primarily English-speaking Canada, support the same thing. So more than a supermajority of Canadians disagree with us. But that doesn't mean they're right. Like we said, just because a majority of people in the room think something doesn't make it right.
Yeah. By the way, let's look at all these elected officials when they're all in their huddled rooms, Nick. They're all fat. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. You all angry about what we said? fmtv@freemindsmedia.org is the email.
About what you said.
Me? What? I was just going over the top of what you said. Make all the same points. I just made people pay attention who were off in the corner or something. I made them pay attention by getting them all irked. Anyways, freemindsmedia.org is the web address. Join us this Sunday and every Sunday live from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Free Minds Radio. And we'll be back next week if all goes well, of course, technical-wise, with an all-new edition of Free Minds TV. It's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a good one.